So based on that then, you made a post recently about people overanalyzing training performance when you're sitting on the rack, and you were talking about like people hyper fixate on everything needs to look perfect, everything needs to move the same. There can't, like, there was 4 degrees of hip shift to the left. You've been running clinics for a long time. You've worked with a lot of high level powerlifters. Do you think it's a case of people hyperanalyze technique in the gym or training performance because they need to have a variable outside of just training hard for a very long period of time to progress? They need to say, well, if I can fix this 4 degrees of hip shift, or I can get my bar slightly straighter, I'm going to see a massive performance increase at my next competition.
I think it does. I think there's a couple of factors. I think it's depending on who they're influenced by, okay, whether that be their coach or someone online. The thing is, when you start looking at technique and you start looking at positions of movement and stuff like that, when there is no issue or no signs of anything to look at, like a full body screen, you start finding problems that aren't problems, okay? So what we need to remember is we are not equal on both sides. We're not split down the middle. One of your hips can potentially have more rotation than the other, could have more and easier to get into flexion or extension. So we're not always going to be completely symmetrical, right? So when you start analyzing, you become so obsessed with that, you start holding back the weights on the bar until everything looks perfect. The problem comes is, what happens if it never looks perfect? At what point do you stop and go, well, fuck it, that's the way it is. I'm now gonna load more weight on the bar. When you get to a level of fatigue, shit changes. The body changes. The body will shift load to tissue that can handle it better in that moment in time. And that doesn't even have to happen through fatigue. That can just happen on a random day. If you're looking for the perfect session, the perfect technique, the perfect visually appeasing lift, you're fucked. Like I'm not trying to play down anyone that's doing it, but the fact of the matter is nothing is ever going to be perfect. Okay, and don't try and look at someone's lift and go, oh my God, look how perfect, how neutral their spine is, or look how perfect their hips drop into that squat. That's them. You're not them. You're never going to be them. You need to deal with that now. You are losing progression. If you have no aches, pains, no discomfort during, after sessions, you are recovering fine, you're going to session feeling good, and you're progressing continuously. Obviously, you're going to have some weeks where weight just feels like gravity just got switched on times 10. That happens to everyone. But if over a 4 or 5 week period, you are still progressing, don't get consumed by it. It does become wait till there's a problem before you try and fix it to some degree. But I do find there's also coaches that will also put that fear into their athletes that we need to fix that bit of flexion or rotation, whatever it is. And that can also that can cause a problem too. And it comes to a point as to, you're not at risk of an injury just because there's a little bit of this and a little bit of that. So if that is your fear, lose it, because it's just not, it's not really sort of justified.
I think you mentioned there as well, I think coaches can inadvertently do that a lot. They can plant ideas in athletes' heads that if they continue down a certain pathway, either it might not necessarily be that they're going to get injured, but they could see a drop off in performance or lagging in performance, when the reality is, for most lifters, outside of your newbie gains phase, I'm air quoting here, is that could be anything from, 6 months, 18 months, depends on, again, like, right, we're talking about powerlifting specifically now, but we could put this across to bodybuilding, CrossFit, whatever your new discipline might be. You're going to make rapid gains in the initial phase as you get more and more skilled at what you do, but you are going to hit that phase eventually. We're going to have to work for every kilo on the bar. And I think sometimes people misinterpret this as a means to say, the reason I'm not progressing now is because I've faulty technique, or my execution's not good, or because they've probably gotten more willing to test themselves against heavier loads. Like, naturally, the moment you push nearer and nearer and closer to your physical capabilities, you're going to start seeing your body compensate in some way. So whatever your aesthetic viewpoint of whatever you can squat or deadlift or bench at like 50 or 60% is going to look very different when you're at like 95% of your actual capabilities. I don't think I've ever seen anybody, let's say, pull a third deadlift that was a true RPE 10 that looked visually like beautiful, like a perfect aesthetic lift,
satisfactory.
It's got, you're going to see like knees wobbling, backs round, and blood vessels bursting in their face. Like I caught one of my guys, Vinny Chung, every time he hits his third squat, has all these blood vessels burst in his face. So it's going to happen. Like, that you're going to have these outcomes. But as I was saying, I think it is the case of coaches inadvertently plant ideas. And I suppose that is a testament to the importance of the language we use. So for you, as somebody that people would rely on as a practitioner, somebody to help them, whether it's navigating pain or even injury or even just concerns, I'd imagine a massive amount of your job is just putting people's minds at ease.
Oh, 100%. 100%. It's sort of positive reinforcement and reassurance that, look, yeah, so what? That bar moved a little bit. You twisted somewhat, a small bit. Yes, there's a small bit of flexion, but the weight moved well. As we discussed previously, it's not like the bar all of a sudden, as a deadlift, flew away from you and then came back. Like it literally just went straight up. You've progressed over the last year nonstop. Your nutrition's under control. Your hydration stuff going into a session is spot on. Your general performance has been consistent. Why are you concerned about this? Where are you getting this concern from? Obviously, there's a reason that this has come into your head, that you've spotted this and you think this is a problem. Where are you getting this from? Let me try and see if I can correct that information if it's coming from a poor source, or is it something you've manufactured yourself from fear? And it's like, okay, that's okay. Look, fear is natural. We all have it at some point in varying situations. But I can tell you for a fact, looking at that, I can't predict that anything is wrong with that. Like I can't see why there should be a concern from that point of view. Everything that we can measure in terms of, as I say, progression, recovery, all this kind of stuff is on check. That's all you have to worry about. For the most part, we know that injuries, they're unpredictable. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, it's just one of those things that just happen. You cannot predict them. Now, when I say that, there are people that are going to go and try and have pulled 150 as a max deadlift and try 2 weeks later, sure, I wonder if I try 190 then and see what happens. Yeah, well, look, I mean, that's stupid. If you're going to try and take a 40% jump in something for the first time, look, I'm not going to tell you you're going to get injured, but your chances are probably a fuckload higher than adding 5%. Do you know?
Yeah, I think it's that, like, I mean, I talk to my lifters about it all the time. You know, the biggest predictors of if you are going to look at injury, everything, if we're just looking at training variables, it's going to be load management, volume and frequency. They're the things we can manipulate. So it'd be very common, for example, if I have lifters that are progressing nicely, let's say under bench press. For bench press, for most people listening, if you're into powerlifting, it typically responds well to higher volume and higher frequency. So the major variable we have is load. But of course, depending on the lifter, particularly male lifters like to push load on bench. So if they're benching 4 days a week, you can assume they're going 85% plus. It's just the way they're wired. You have to put artificial limiters in place to make them not push that high. It'd be a very common complaint, let's say, if people that run the abs peak for their shoulders and elbows and things to start hurting because it's quite high volume, quite high frequency, and then everyone's pushing really high loads by the end of it. Yeah. So I actually think it was Shane Story made a really good post about it ages ago about like the 3 variables. And, you know, if you try and run all 3 of them at the same time, you just end up in an ambulance. But I do agree with what you're saying. I think a lot of it's based around fear. Yeah. Even if people have never been injured, there's this inherent fear. And I can't imagine what it must be like to go into the gym with that all the time, to think like I could get hurt. But I also think an element of it is, and this is from experience with a lifter of mine, I think it might be self-sabotage. It's a case of, I'm going to plant this seed of doubt now that, oh, well, I moved with bad technique, that's why I missed that rep. Or, oh, I executed poorly, I didn't warm up correctly, that's why my wrist hurts and my back hurts and my elbow hurts and my neck hurts. And it's almost like before especially if you know you're going to be coming outside the realm of your comfort zone in terms of load, it gives you an out after to say, well, that's why it didn't go well. Rather than, because I've got lifters that they could, let's say their max deadlift's 140 kilos and they pulled 132.5 lightning speed on second week of a block of singles. All you might say, let's go 140 next week. Like, that's my max. I'm like, not anymore, it's not. But in their mind, there's so much anxiety around the number that they perceive to be heavy. Yeah. So I think it's certain people prefer to stay in a certain range where they know they can move really optimally, what they consider to be optimal. And
until the point of fear kicks in.
Exactly. And then this becomes the problem with progression. The reason they're not progressing isn't necessarily because of technique. It's because they've like this fear of progressing, whether it's load, whether it's reps, whatever it might be. But again, you would have a much more intimate understanding of this, given that you're dealing with people when they have that other side. And as much as your job is physical, it's that psychological element I think is really, really important to discuss.
It's the hardest part of my job. The physical's easy. Because it's very easy to get someone to load tissue in a certain manner or load a joint in a certain position, but I'm not a psychologist.
Mm-hmm.
I can only tell them from my experience and what evidence and, of course, research tells us in terms of what is risky and what's not. And what I say to people is, and you have to just be careful. I have to be careful how I say this to people that don't play down their feelings. But what's the worst that can happen?
Mm-hmm.
It's going to hurt. Okay, that's fine. We can deal with that afterwards. But if we don't try, we won't know. You have to get to the point where you get past that anticipation of pain. Because I can guarantee you, and I'm not gonna call out researching this. I'm telling you from my experience and my opinion that if you're anticipating pain during a movement, there is a very high probability you're going to experience it.
Mm-hmm.
If you go in with confidence and intensity and intention and just fucking move that weight, there's probably a less likelihood of that pain, or the pain's going to be a lower level than if you went in there completely to the heels of anxiety and fear of, oh fuck, this is going to hurt. Because I've seen this with people, and it works. Yes, it works online. It works very well in person as well, where I'll get someone coming into me and they're experiencing back pain during a certain back pain or whatever pain during a certain movement. And I'll have a chat to them and sort of just could of develop a rapport where we can kind of just calm them down a little bit because they're anticipating what we're going to do next. Do a couple things. And sometimes it's movements that are completely unrelated to their problem. They don't know this though. It's a bit of a distraction. And then I'll do one or two things more in line with what they're experiencing. And we'll do a couple things, spend 10, 15 minutes doing a few exercises, other things. And then we'll go and start with a light load of whatever this issue is. How'd that feel? Great. Excellent. Look, moved. Piece of piss. Let's put some more on there. Oh yeah, sound, no bother. How'd that move? How'd that feel? Great. Perfect. Before they know it, they're at that weight that they're fearful of and nothing's wrong. And they're like, that's so fucking weird. I'm like, well, it isn't really, because it's not magic. I know, and this is just fact. People often say, oh, he's a wizard. I'm like, no. I'm just trying to show you that you're well capable of doing it. You just need to get out of your own head sometimes. Mm-hmm. And it's not that your pain doesn't exist. It's just that your pain isn't a pathology in your situation. There's no tear. There's no ruptures. There's nothing. There's no actual damage. So you had a sensation, pain or otherwise, and now that's stuck in your head. And you are conscious that if you go to do that, it's going to happen again because it's probably the first time it's happened, or maybe it's the 10th time it happened, but you've never had it addressed and you don't know how to deal with it. And then what happens is when it's gone, you're like, that's fucking unbelievable. It's like, no, we just got you out of your own head for a few minutes and distracted you. I've done it with other people before where I know there's physically nothing wrong with them. I just need to distract them enough for a few minutes to get them back into that exercise. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, fuck. Why? Because you didn't think about it. You just did it. And then they can go off and off they go. And for the vast majority of people, that's the end of it. They don't need to do anything else. They've overcome that. And it can be a case of literally overcoming in 10 minutes. Sometimes it will take a few situations. And what we can also do is, because you can load a joint and tissue in a million different ways, you can get them to load that same movement, but whether it's them lying down doing it or standing up, depending on what their issue is, do the opposite. And now you explain to them, well, look, you've just done, if you look at yourself now, if I just turned you 90 degrees, you would be in that same position and there's zero pain, isn't there? No, there isn't. Yeah, there's nothing. Okay, so why don't you just try standing up, so? And it's like, oh shit. Do you know what I mean? It's not said it's all completely in their head.
Yeah.
But fear is completely in your head. The fear is. It's not physical. But it's just a matter of how you address that, and not to tell the person that they're mental, that there's something wrong with them because they think like that, because fear is completely natural. But it's just to teach them that fear's okay. It doesn't mean that something's going to go wrong. You still have to do it. And that's why I don't tell anyone to stop doing the thing that hurts. I just tell them, can we just drop the load to a point where it's uncomfortable, or pain below, say, 3 out of 10, 4 out of 10. That's enough that you'll probably still move the same way. You just won't really like it, but that's fine. That's a metric now. Now we're going to implement X, Y, and Z, and let's see what that same weight does in 3 days' time. Okay, the pain went down to 2, 1, 0. There was no pain.
Yeah.
Excellent. Let's add 10% to it in 3 days' time. What happens now? Still no pain. Excellent. Keep going. Do you know, and that's all it sometimes takes.
Yeah, I 100% agree with everything there, because I think it's people have very, very complex relationships with pain for a myriad of different reasons, and they all experience it slightly differently. And I think a lot of what it can be in, let's say, in your role or in my role, It's finding ways and means to communicate with them that shifts them away from that like a negative headspace they might be in without necessarily undermining or disrespecting their experience, because that's the point. It's when like we might practically know there's actually physically nothing wrong. What you're experiencing is a normal human sensation. And I'm sure everybody at home hopefully knows by this stage, pain is just part of the human experience. We're just all going to experience it at some point.
Yeah.
But it's
how
like
you deal with it.
Exactly. Like when I get somebody new coming in for training, whether like just a standard, one-on-one client who might want to, shape up, lose some body fat, whatever it might be, your usual reason I started going to the gym. And they like, they might, I want to tone up a little bit, right? Now, I know, and you know that word does not mean what they think it means, but I know enough now of what they want to say, yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
Rather than go, well, actually,
yeah, you're wrong. This is,
you're not, you're not a printer. You don't need toner. You know what I mean? It's,
the tone is how your muscle actually feels to the touch more than anything else, really.
Exactly. So what they mean is reduce body fat enough that they can see striations in the skin of the muscle.
Yeah.
I get that. So I'm going to let them use the language that makes sense to them rather than correcting them and immediately making them feel like an idiot. So I'm sure it's the same in your role. You are not going to say, well, look, you've nothing to be afraid of. Your squat's fine. Your pain's all in your head. Yeah. You're going to say, okay, well, let's try this series of movements and let them learn over the course of the hour session or whatever it might be that they can move in this myriad of other ways, and whatever anxiety and fear they had built up of that particular movement is something they fabricated over a very long series of weeks and months of training potentially. Yeah. And I think that's the thing. It's like people forget that if you're training 4 times a year, Jesus, you're not training at all. 4 times a week, you're training probably in the realm of around 200 sessions or so a year. All right, so assuming you do it every week, so in the range of 150 to 200 sessions. The problem is that people tend to only live in the here and the now, and they don't understand that it's a roll-on effect. So we see that when people are like, well, I want to get in shape, and they go to the gym for 2 weeks and nothing changes physically, so they're like, well, I'm out of here. They don't realize it's probably going to be like 3, 4, 5, 6 months down the road before they see the result. And I think it's the same if somebody has a drop off in performance in a training session. That does not necessarily mean next week's going to be as bad, but a lot of the time they can carry whatever pessimism they've built up in that session and carry it to the next and say, yeah, the weights still aren't feeling good, I can't go up. And they're like starting to detrain themselves almost due to something that's strictly psychological. Like there might have been other factors, and I'm sure you encounter this all the time: work stress, family stress, life stress, and maybe that's contributing to a lack of sleep, a lack of good nutrition, high stress, which is causing them to experience aches and pains more profoundly, and being more irritable, more less likely to rationalize these things. And I think it creates this void of like movement pessimism almost. Yeah. So go ahead.
Yeah. The other, I suppose, we need to, find out what I say to people, what is an acceptable level of pain before you should get concerned or before you should seek advice from someone in this realm. What I say to people is if you're having pain during a training, right? The common sense is, okay, we know that load and pain have a fairly strong correlation to each other, in that the higher the load, when you're already in pain, potentially the pain might increase or the sensation might get worse.
Where you're exerting yourself a lot more.
Yeah, exactly. So when you're experiencing a bit of pain, like obviously I get people that would text me literally like, TJ, have you any spots there free? Yeah, sure. What's the problem? Oh, I was just fucking doing deadlifts there and I felt something in my hamstring. Okay, like an hour ago. Okay, like let's whoa, Nelly, hang on there for a second. Like that happened an hour ago. Fuck, it could be perfectly fine tomorrow. Like let's just know. I'm not even going to discuss it at the moment. And then look at that session. Can you, especially when it comes to back pain, we know that sleep, stress and anxiety play a huge role in people's sensation of the back. So it's a lot of things. Okay, right. So training's been going excellently. This week, I felt something. Okay, cool. In the previous 4 weeks leading up to this, did anything in your life change? Job, college, exams, anything that might have created stress, because stress on top of stress on top of stress on top of stress isn't a nice thing. Exercise is stress. Yes, it happened during a deadlift. Was a deadlift the problem? Probably not. It was probably just the cherry on the top of the levels of stress. We know that in a deadlift, for example, where sometimes people think deadlifts are quite a popular exercise for injury. But if we think about logically in stress, a deadlift uses approximately 82% of the muscles in your body. So it probably is one of, if not the most exerting exercise you could possibly do, which is probably not ideal given your stress leading right up to it. So in the last 4 weeks, has your sleep been averaging the same? Has everything in your life been the same? Okay, let's just give it a few days. Go about your life as normal. Let's see what happens. Try an RDL. If it's head and hamstring, try an RDL in a day or two's time. See what it feels like. Try a light bar. See what it feels like. Feels good? Keep loading it. Perfect. Try a deadlift. Feels good. Fine. Done. Don't have to talk to me again. Don't have to pay me nothing. Do you know what I mean? But it's this fear that pain equals harm, and that it's because the pain got worse, I'm now causing damage. And it's like, no. So as I've said this, I think we touched on this last time, so be quick, but your pain is your alarm system going, look, if it's not a pathology, it's not an actual rupture, tear, physical trauma, it's your body going, don't like that, hang on a second. You keep pushing through. Sometimes it gets better by itself, or you've just increased load and the body goes, oh, I told you before I don't like that. I'm going to turn the volume up on this, which is the pain sensation. And it's like, fuck, I really don't like this. Let's hang on a second. Nothing is really getting worse. It's very hard to injure yourself further than you already are. Like it's a challenge, like, you know. So it's just if pain is below a 4 out of 10, I'm not telling anyone listening to this, but my clients will be told, keep going. Because you still move the same for the most part. It might be pleasant, might be nice, but you can still train the same. If it gets worse, the pain gets higher, what we sometimes find is the body will adapt to that and it will shift load to other tissue. And that sometimes is when that tissue it's shifted load to isn't conditioned to that, we could see a problem arise then. So if it's below 4 out of 10, give it a week or two. Even if you drop 5% off that load, a small amount, and it drops, the load drops a bit. I mean, the pain level drops a bit. Go for that week or the following week. Then go back up another 5-10%, see what happens. If the pain hasn't increased, off you go. You know, but it's just understanding when is a time to call someone, and straight after it's happened, unless you've actually, you know, something's fucking torn or pulled off of the fucking bone. Yeah, different story. But like, if you've just felt a sensation, don't rush calling your practitioner, because there's probably not much they're going to do any different to just take a minute, go home, throw a bit of heat on it, get into a hot bath, and chill out for the day. Relax. Don't panic.
I think some of it's going to be the reason they might like, I would look at it like this, if I'm going to put a positive spin on it. I'd imagine it's they trust your assessment.
Oh, 100%.
And they want you to say you're okay.
Yes. Oh, definitely.
You know?
Definitely. Yeah.
So and I think some of it's that, because this is one thing I've learned over the past while, being around more high level powerlifters very frequently. Just because they lift well in one particular sport doesn't mean they know fuck all about training or nutrition or recovery. Like, they're still, outside of their ability to do really good at squat, bench, and deadlift, potentially being really super athletes, they know fuck all else about being somebody in this space.
Yes.
And I think it's understanding that just because somebody's good at one thing does not necessarily mean that translates across the board. And I think it's, from my background, like, again, I was a personal trainer, like a one-on-one personal trainer for like 6 years prior to getting into powerlifting coaching. And before that, a pro wrestling coach. So I've been working with people intimately one-on-one for a very long time. I think this is the first time the people I'm working with primarily, I'm making the assumption that because I'm a coach that's also an athlete, they're also understand that aspect of it. Yeah. So like we talked about before, sometimes even coaches can perpetrate the misinformation without meaning to.
Yes.
Like, I wonder, I try and have this conversation at some points with all my clients and athletes. The prevalence of injury in sports like powerlifting versus most other sports. Like, for example, people wouldn't think twice about going and kicking a football around the field or throwing a ball back and forth to each other, going for a run. Yet the prevalence of injury in these activities is higher than that of even basic resistance training or even something as specific as powerlifting. So you can actually find the statistics of this, by the way. I think it's around 4 injuries in powerlifting per 1,000 hours participated. Yep. Whereas I know field sports quite high, and contact field sports is astronomical.
Yeah.
So I think it's if people understand that. But then I think it's also, there's this idea that lifting weights or training in any capacity just inherently carries the risk of getting hurt. And sometimes people say to me, well, you know, I didn't want to go heavier because I just don't want to get hurt. I'm like, yeah, but like, not the majority of the adult population don't train, and they all get fucking hurt as well.
Yep.
So I think it's correlation does not necessarily equal causation. Just because you know somebody who went to the gym and they got hurt doing, say, the deadlift, that does not mean deadlifts are dangerous. It means perhaps a myriad of different things about that person, but maybe not anything we can comment on. But we also know that people that don't ever train hurt their backs.
Yeah.
So I think it's that for people. It's trying to help people understand that the activity they're engaged in does not inherently increase their likelihood of getting hurt. And I think it's also that like, I'd imagine that's a big thing for you. Like a lot of your conversations are probably around injury, getting hurt, aches, pains. It's like these two things, training and pain and injury, I don't think have to be like glued to each other in the way that they are. And it's a really bizarre thing that people do. It's the conversations almost happen one after the other. Like they're talking about, oh, you lift all those heavy weights. Have you ever had an injury? Have you ever hurt yourself? Like I get asked that. Have I ever had injuries in powerlifting? No. Never because of powerlifting. I've been hurt. I wouldn't even say injured because I think that's a term that we've talked about before. Is very overused.
I've had pain, experienced pain.
I don't think any of it's been due to powerlifting. I think it's happened while I've been doing powerlifting, but I think it's a myriad of other things outside of powerlifting that probably impacted it. But one thing I will give for you is somebody, now that I've got a couple of my athletes working with you that I really like, is that there are times where myself and my athlete, the coach and athlete relationship, sometimes it is, I could tell them the same piece of information 5 or 6 different ways, but it's only when they go to somebody external that they see in a certain role. Like for you, it'd be like, a pain relief specialist, let's just say. They are more willing to say, oh, well, TJ said, so I better do it now,
Yeah.
So, and I find that, but as I'm sure there'll be coaches that are frustrated with it. I love that. I think it's great. I can like outsource my problems to you.
Yeah, 100%. Look, I'll give you an example. I had a lift come to me a few weeks back. He trains out of the north. He's coached by a coach in the UK. Back pain, young enough lifter, back pain during squats and deadlifts. And so I was like, cool, this is what we're going to try. And in the first week, the pain, small changes, but he was still a bit of pain. So he's obviously feeding back to his coach that's hurting. So his coach took squat and deadlift out of his program. Wow. So I'm like, okay, so there goes my biggest metric of measuring progression in this athlete, apart from day-to-day life. So day-to-day life, pain improved. I'm like, now what do we do? Like, I need you to squat and deadlift. Like, but the thing is that some coaches will take on board what I've said, and implement or try it. Or some coaches will say, well, I can deadlift 320 kgs, you can't, I think I know better. So I'm going to program my athlete whatever way I feel fit. And that's fine. That's okay. Unfortunately, athlete's going to waste their money on me, because if you're going to not listen to what I'm suggesting, we're not looking at the athlete's best interest. We're now an ego situation, and I don't get involved in that. So here's what I'm suggesting to you to say to your coach. If he doesn't want to talk to me directly, this is what I'll put in your email. This is what my theory is, what my suggestions are. It's up to him whether he wants to implement that or not. The fact that this coach doesn't even follow me is fine, but then he has no idea who I am or what I do, how I work. So he's only just taken his own opinion, and that's it, and that's perfectly fine. But unfortunately, now you're putting your lifter second and your ego first, and that to me is quite popular, and I don't like it. But I'm not going to fall out with coaches. I'm blessed where I have a lot of coaches and top level coaches that send their clients to me, because I know I've done personal training, I've done fitness instruction, I've done basic nutrition. I do have an understanding of a lot of the stuff and how other aspects influence their situation, not just that one exercise. And that I can suggest programming to some degree where, okay, let's look at getting the volume in another way, because this athlete seems to be symptomatic after high volume in terms of 5-6 reps. Can we break their programming down to be sets of 4 instead, giving them 90 seconds, 2 minutes rest at the start while we introduce X, Y, and Z? They can still get the volume in another way, but we can reduce the symptoms thereof. How many physical therapists, physiotherapists, athletic therapists, sports therapists, whatever, how many get to that level of detail that they can help with your programming based on your symptoms, or suggest another accessory based on the way you move and what benefits your situation? I don't know that many, to be honest. And I'm not trying to blow my own horn, but I think it's because I'm involved in the sport of powerlifting. I have been coached by Dav for 4 years now. And I have experience in programming and stuff myself. I don't do it because it doesn't excite me like the pain stuff is. So I will do it in my own sort of suggestion of exercise or whatever it is for that client's issue. But I don't coach people as an athlete. I will only coach you from a technique, pain, rehabilitation situation.
Well, you can blow your own horn a little bit. That's all right.
But you know what I mean? I see this where the clients come to me and they've been to someone else and they're like, oh, they told me to stop squatting.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why? Like, how do we measure what they've given you has had any impact if we
Yeah.
don't do the thing that's causing the symptoms?
Well, particularly if it's a power lifter, if you're not doing the skill that you are trying to improve on, and that solves the problem, it's kind of a temporary patch over what we are trying to do in the long run.
And you yourself, strength gains takes a fucking long time. Like,
Yes.
so like the longer you don't do it, the more the delay is,
Yeah.
you know. And also, if any athletes listening, you really need to explain to your coach if you're having a problem.
Yeah.
I recently had a client come to me and I said to the coach, okay, I know the coach very well. So I said, look, so-and-so came to me. This is what I've suggested. Sure, they never mentioned a thing to me. They didn't say anything. Like, don't suffer in silence. You're paying your coach for your programming and for everything else. You need to let them know when shit's not working. Like, don't just shut up about it. Come to someone like me and not talk to them and let them know, because they can only do what they know. They can only help you with the information you've given them. You don't tell them something, don't assume they have a fucking crystal ball. Like, because if everything's moving well but you're in pain, they only see what you're saying, what they see in the videos. And then you come to me and I go to you and you go to your coach and coach goes, what the fuck's going on? I don't know. Like, sorry, but I have no idea. Like, you know.
So I'll interject there from the coaching perspective. And there's a couple of really good points you've made that I definitely want to chime in on. So one is when we talk specifically about, let's say, coaches and athletes and communication, and then the therapist, the coach, and the athlete all communicating together. I think that is the best outcome when all three entities are communicating for the best interest of the outcomes of the athlete, which is ultimately what we all want. Yeah. If I'm someone's coach and they're experiencing pain or anything in training that a therapist could help with, whatever it might be, and they're experiencing that to the point that the outcomes of the trainer are not where we want, they're not able to complete sessions, I don't mind what the therapist might suggest, assuming it is for the best outcome of the athlete and they communicate clearly with me. In my experience, the problem tends to be this, is that, and now some of this blame lies on the athlete as well. The athlete will go to a therapist without ever communicating this to the coach. They'll get the therapist might not necessarily know that they're with a coach, and they could just assume they're dealing with a member of the lay public who might not know a whole lot about training. So they give them some very basic guidelines that then the athlete has to try and interpret to the coach. It might be, oh, they told me to stop doing this for 6 weeks. That might not necessarily be what they said. Yeah. They might have said, well, what we're going to do is we're going to reduce the number of whatever sessions you're going to do on that thing that causes that pain. Yeah. They might not have said cease. And I know some do. Like, and this is kind of a problem. I've been in that position where I've butted heads with therapists because they're trying to tell my athlete what to do without ever consulting with me. But I think it also falls to the athlete to communicate to the coach they're going to speak to a therapist, and communicate to the therapist they have a coach, and then for the coach and the therapist to work together. Yeah. So I think it's quite complex, and it all boils down to communication, and it's making sure that whatever the outcome is, whatever everybody is looking for, we're trying to get the athlete back to a competitive standard, or be able to train to a standard they can do with minimal to no pain.
Yeah, and like you and me have communicated about some of your athletes, and one thing I'll always say is I will never try and come across that, look, I know better, do this. I'll be like, look, I'm going to suggest you do X, Y, and Z, and this is why. Now, I've put it in your hands. It's up to you whether you want to try it or not. It's not that it's got nothing to do with me after that. It's just that if you don't want to, I can't force you, and I'm not going to try and pull I'm better qualified than you bullshit, because I've given you my explanation. I've tried to explain as to why. I've explained the same thing to the same athlete. And like in your situation, I don't do it to every coach, but in your situation, I email you and them the same program. So you can see what I have them doing. Yeah. And also you can look at your programming and go, well, actually, that is kind of similar to this. So I'll take this out. So we're not overloading that volume because they're getting the same benefit from what TJ said and this. So let's just take one of them out. That way we're not adding too much more they can't recover from.
Well, but that's the thing. I think that's why I would send my athletes to you, because we can communicate quite easily. And I think it's, again, your orientation towards the athlete having better outcomes aligns exactly with mine. And I think that when you can find that or strike that balance as a coach where you can't, like, for example, it's better for me to say, well, here's somebody who's much more well-versed in these things than me. That's, and I suppose.
Or like you say, it's a person that you think might need that reassurance from someone, again, I hate the phrase, but more qualified or specializing in, when you know the same thing as what I do in their situation, but they want it from they want a professional. And I'm not trying to be power trip here, a professional's opinion. And look, people are like that, and that's fine. The issue is when the professional they go to knows fuck all about powerlifting or strenuous exercise at all and puts that fear of, well, let's not do it because it's obviously the problem. It's
Well,
well, no, it's just a cause of symptoms.
Like if I'm this is where I'd like I'll bring this is like as the coach, that's why it's great for me. I don't care if we want to say, you know, you're more qualified. I trust TJ's opinion on this more. That works for me because it's still two voices agreeing on the same plan or the same the same plan that will achieve the outcome versus the hundreds of thousands of voices they could be trying to absorb through Instagram or YouTube or whatever it might be. And that's one of the biggest contentious things I deal with anyway, is that somebody watched some fucking TikToker talk about the way they should deadlift or they should bench or they should squat or what the exercises they should prioritize or how hard they should train or how soft they should train or, you know, like this guy on YouTube, Athlete X, I think everyone's probably had a series of time where they've watched a bit of his stuff. Seems like a good guy, but like started making videos strictly just for clicks. So like you can have a video explaining how to do a great plank workout and then how planks are killing your gains. You know, make sure you train the long head of your tricep, but overhead tricep extensions are killing your gains. And it's that people, well, you know, why do I have, you know, heavy plank holds when this video says you shouldn't do those because core training is useless or whatever bollocks it might be. Or, oh, well, I watched fucking crap on Squat University again. I watched a Squat University video and he says everyone should be able to squat with their toes forward and I need to angle my toes out. Does that mean I have a movement fucking deficit or whatever? You know, it's so at least if it's one other person that goes, no, what Ian said is fucking fine and this is what we're going to do. It's like, great. Perfect. Excellent.
Again, it's the best interest of the athlete. And again, when it comes to those topics of this is why you shouldn't do this or I should do this, a prime example of why no one's pain is the same is that you take two of your recent clients, both came to you with shoulder issues and both have completely different plans. But yet both are, one is completely and utterly pain-free and no discomfort, nothing. One is almost no pain. But yet completely different plans, but almost very similar symptoms. Why? Because you look at how they move, you look at other aspects, their job, what they spend their day doing. So you know how they load tissue. So you know which of the 50 different exercises I could have given them are the ones that are going to load the way I want them to load. You know, and a lot of that comes down to experience. There's only so much, as we spoke about previous, this is qualifications. There's only so much a piece of paper tells how much you know. But when you start actually working with bodies and people, you realize you know fuck all. And it just comes down to the more people you work with, the better you should get. Yes.
I suppose now for you especially, you've become way more visible, let's say over the past 6 to 8 months. I believe you are going or have gone fully self-employed, am I right?
I'm going into I'm in my second week of self-employment.
Congratulations. It's a big move.
It is. Just for what I was doing prior was my full-time employment was developing balloons for catheters, going from research and development point to bring them to commercial production for companies abroad. So my life for the last 2 years has been get up at 5 a.m. every morning, go to work, finish at roughly 3 o'clock. Then I train 3 days a week. I also have kids and family, whatever. And then I do my online stuff in the evenings up until like 10 o'clock in the evening, climb back into bed and repeat, rinse and repeat. When clocking up like 80 hours a week, that's not like a woe is me, something I chose to do. I always thought I would. I started more into this towards the end of last year. I was planning to at some point go full time, but fear held me back. Then something sort of happened, and it kind of gave me a bit of a kick up the arse to. In the last, I resigned say 7 weeks ago. So it gave me something happened and gave me the kick to do it. And I suppose that's where I lie now.
Well, I mean, it's a great position to find yourself in that is an option on the table, and it speaks volumes to the rapport you've built with a number of different athletes and individuals over the course of the last couple of years. Yeah. But I'm not going to pry into your personal life.
No.
But as your you know, people know you more now. You're become a reliable resource to many lifters. With equal measure of referral and positive, you've probably dealt with your fair share of like criticism or people coming at you. I know you mentioned before there's people that leave anonymous comments on your videos and things like that. Yeah. What is usually the point that people come at when they're trying? Is it all one thing, or is it just a myriad of different trying to poke holes in the way you approach things?
Yeah, I think I don't know. I don't know what the problem is with some people. I suppose people will question well, my qualifications, because I don't display them on page. And one of the reasons behind that is I did a course in neuromuscular therapy. Now, in Ireland, you have something called CORU, C-O-R-U, that protects the title of physiotherapist and physical therapist. Okay, so it is illegal to call yourself a physiotherapist unless you've done X, Y, and Z courses, or a physical therapist unless you've done X, Y, and Z courses. The course I did used to be called NMPT, which is neuromuscular physical therapist, but when this law came in, they had to change that. So no longer are you allowed to call yourself a physical therapist because the physical therapists and physiotherapists will get up in arms and sue you. The issue is the course I did taught you a lot of manual therapy. And at the time, I thought, fuck, this is gold. This is going to make me fucking millions now. I'm going to be rubbing people fucking left, right, and center. The best thing about that course was its delivery of anatomy. Origins, insertions, all this kind of stuff. I found that very good. The rest of that stuff, I don't use. I don't believe in it. I did, obviously when I taught, I thought this is fucking gold. Then I came to people and realized, but sure, I rubbed this person the same way they taught me and sure, they didn't get relief. I've done this, that, like, this can't be all right. And that's when I had to start doing my own sort of looking around and doing online workshops and clinics and stuff like that to figure out what else can I be doing? Like, we need to move. So why me pressing on someone isn't having that desired outcome all the time? Yes, sometimes people got relief and that was fine. But, so then I don't practice what I qualified in. So I suppose technically call me unqualified, really. Do you know? Now, as I have a qualification, personal training, physical instruction, classes, all that kind of stuff. So I am qualified to give exercise because that's another thing in this country. Insurance, a massage therapist, and a neuromuscular therapist are not qualified or insured to give you exercises. So if they do and something goes wrong, sorry if anyone's listening, they're not qualified if something goes, they're not insured if something goes wrong. So you have to have a personal training qualification alongside that. So I'm qualified to teach someone exercise, so therefore I'm fully qualified in what I do. And I'm not at the same time. It's quite, I'm not trying to be I'm not a physiotherapist.
It's
not,
red tape.
I don't even call myself a physical therapist because I believe I have clients come to me that's been to a physiotherapist that only does manual therapy. And I don't think that's what they're taught. They're not taught only manual therapy. They're taught exercise as well. So, I think qualifications nowadays, it's almost nowadays nearly experience and referrals and recommendations are nearly better than the piece of paper hung up on the back of the wall.
I think most people in almost every profession where there's like a qualification standard required would almost universally agree that your qualification is to get your foot in the door. It doesn't make you good at your job. It doesn't make you able to help people. It doesn't matter what role it's in, but you have to actually get boots on the ground and work with people for pretty extended period of time to be even decent at what you do.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, like, there's people like that'll say, oh, sure, he's, what are we now, 2023. So 10, 12 years ago, I was a manager in Pennies. I spent my life in running in the hospitality industry and then went into retails. So I was a manager in Pennies. I was a deputy store manager in New Look after that. I hated my life. Now, I love Pennies. Pennies, in fairness, was probably one of the best jobs and one of the best companies to work for. I moved to New Look and shit just went downhill for me there. Eventually, I got out of that and went my own way. But I can blow my own horn when I say I'm working with some of the world's best athletes.
100%.
Like example, currently with Tom Smith, after his quad tear, Ellis Vine with his patella rupture. I have to be doing something right. Whether you like me or don't, or you disagree with what I do, that's cool. I don't agree with everyone either, and I still follow people I disagree with, and I still respect them. I must be doing something right with the amount of people in the amount of countries I work with and in person. So you can question all you want, and that's fine. I'm open to being questioned. If you want to have a debate with me, please do. Just make sure you're not coming from a hidden account or a fucking one you just created today, because I'm not going to call you out in public. I'm not going to say, I had a private conversation with Ian, he called me a cunt, and excuse my language, and put on social media. I'm not like that. Yes, I will call out misinformation from people. I won't do the whole necessarily tag them or picture of them or screenshot them, but I will try and correct what they're saying. And again, I don't say anyone's bad. 99% of people, whatever they're putting out on social media is the best interest of whoever they're trying to target. Okay?
I think a good point to make there is, I think the art of debate is lost. I think people are arguing past each other to prove points.
It becomes too personal.
Yeah. And that's it. It turns into ad hominem. They just attack the person rather than the person's argument or the evidence.
Attack the subject, not the person.
Exactly.
The topic, you know.
But I think it's also about going into the conversation, knowing what you stand on, what your points are, and then trying to learn the other person's points and then compare.
You have to be open-minded. Okay, you have to be open-minded.
Yeah.
You have to. The thing is, we discussed this before we started recording. There's an aspect to look at. If you disagree with someone, okay, and you have two choices. You can ignore it, or you can debate it with them. If you want to debate it with them, but you won't, why is that? Are you not confident in your own stance? Do you think maybe it's something built on person because you're not comfortable articulating in text? Because as we know, tone can be completely misconstrued in text or any other point as discussed by in person. I'm glad I debate other people. I've debated some well-known people in their DMs, and it's not questioning why I think they're wrong. I will say, you mentioned this. Can I ask, like, can you just explain to me why? Because either I don't understand it or I understand it completely differently. And maybe I understand completely wrong and I need to understand it. So sometimes, yes, I change up and go, okay, that makes fucking sense. Jesus, yeah, so why the fuck and I might say, well, this was my viewpoint. And they might either say, well, this is why your viewpoint has been changed or whatever. And I can learn. Or we can go, cool, let's agree to disagree on this. I'm still going to follow you. I'm still going to respect you. I'm still going to be amicable because I'm not challenging you. I'm just challenging something that was said because I understand differently. Yeah. And that's the only way you're either going to learn or either cement what you believe or change your mind because you've been disproven. Not you, but your point has been changed. And it's like, okay, fuck yeah. Like that, I thought massage was the best thing in the world. Now, I get people coming to me all the time for sports massage because they think I give a great sports massage. People coming to me just for needling because they like it and I'm not going to say to them, I'm not going to do it for them, but they're not coming to me for it to solve a problem. They're coming to me because it feels good and they like it. Yeah. And that's perfectly fine. We're not causing harm. They're not leaving me bruised, black and blue, like some people leave people. You know, I'm not scraping the shit out of them or fucking sticking my elbow as deep into their tissue as I possibly can. But they like the way it feels. And fuck, I might do that. But it doesn't mean I'm going to use it as a tool to solve a problem.
The talented hands of Tristan Jacobs. Infamous.
We won't show you my calluses.
Well known throughout Irish powerlifting and beyond. You make a good point though. So you're saying that if you are disputing someone's stance, it's not an attack on them.
No.
But I think what happens with a lot of people is they build an entire identity on certain practices. So as much as you are coming at this in a very practical, logical sentiment, they can only have an emotional reaction because you are in essence attacking their identity.
Yeah. So that's the thing. It's don't whatever you do and whatever you practice, try not have a emotional or cause it to become a personal belief. It's basically an opinion based on certain things. And like ourselves, we all have an opinion. Okay. So everyone's entitled to it. And if we all had the same opinion on everything, this world would be a boring fucking place.
100%.
You're entitled to have a different opinion than someone else, still be friends, still be respected, and still be recommended.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
and that's in every aspect, not just what I do.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think having particularly in like practice, I can understand if people have like massive like moral differences.
Oh, different. Like when it comes to like religion or food or stuff like that. But like when it comes to actual, as I say, practice of strategy or implementation of programming or something like that, it's like.
So I think and this is where I think the breakdown happens is that, so if somebody has one particular, if their only tool is a hammer, everything's a nail.
Yeah.
So if you're trying to tell them, you don't have to bash that piece of wood in half, you could use a saw.
Yeah.
If all they've ever known is the hammer, the first thing you're going to do is try and turn around and bludgeon you with it.
Yes.
Instead of letting you show them how to use the saw. But then if you can agree, well, look, the ideal outcome here is to cut the wood in half. In this weird analogy, the wood is the client, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
We can achieve the job with a different practice that might be, it's more up to date, it works a little bit better. There's better outcomes with this. Surely it's to the betterment of your customer base, client base, patient base to change your ways or to at least alter them enough that you are in keeping with what will have the best outcomes for them. And I think this is where some people struggle.
Yeah, you want to have the most efficient service possible.
Yeah. Like
my aim in clinic and online is my online only works on a 4-week block at the time. In well over 90% of the cases, I don't need you for a second block.
Yeah.
Okay. My aim is to work with someone or see someone as seldom as I can. And I say to clients, that isn't because I don't like people, or I don't like people in general, but I mean, personally, it's not that I don't want to work with you. I don't, like I say to clients in clinic, right, this is what we've done. Happy days. This is what I'm going to email you now, your program. Off you go. I have a generated email that always says, unless otherwise spoken in clinic, book another appointment for 4 weeks' time. Because within that period, I'll touch base client anyway. Go, all going well, perfect. Don't book that appointment. Jimmy, I don't make someone book an appointment before they leave, because they might need to come to me. Yes, from a revenue point of view, especially being self-employed now, that's probably not the smartest business practice, but morally, I sleep well at night. And that client has my respect now. So they will come back to me when someone goes problem, or refer someone, because he's not going to have you in for 5 or 6 sessions. Might be 1, maybe 2, but very rare, very seldom is more than that.
Do you think, just to ask the question, has this ever like bitten you in the back where like some people think, oh, well, he doesn't care because he's not trying to book me in again?
No, they can be a bit shocked.
Right.
But the thing is, I don't not communicate them again. I will have it in my diary to drop a message, go, how are you getting on?
Yeah.
I won't hide. But at the same time, some people just don't communicate back.
Yeah.
And if I say to you, contact me in 2 weeks, and you don't, I also don't have the time to be texting every single person.
Yeah.
So I say to you, contact me on this day, check in on this day, whatever the case is, whether it be online or in person. And if you don't, you need to be aware that I can't chase you. I have other people that also need help. I'm not going to go chasing people that won't contact me. My assumption is if you don't contact me, it's because everything's perfectly fine.
Yeah, which would be the ideal case.
You would assume so, but some people don't. And like there is cases that go, oh no, it got a bit better, but then it came back with everyone's like, but you didn't. So how can I help you if you don't tell me? As I say to you about telling a coach, if you don't tell me something got better and they got worse, I need to understand why, because I need to learn as well. This isn't about me making money. It's also about me improving my understanding and knowledge, and what worked with some, we know it doesn't always work with others. But I can also use that information and go, hang on, this same thing happened to someone last year, and this is what I did. Let's try that again and see if that has the same impact. And then you can start building data and understanding of things, and again, make yourself more proficient.
Yeah, I would wonder, like, just on that particular case, I think this is where I think individual preference kind of comes in, because some people like to be like almost babysat.
Yes.
They want to feel like, oh, they care, they're checking in on me, they're keeping up with me. Oh, I didn't text them and they text me twice, so I know they want to have me as a patient.
Yeah.
Because I've worked with people in the past who have said like, oh, such and such a coach wasn't very good because they didn't check in that often. But when you talk to the coach, they're like, this person never ever gave me anything to check in with. But the person just wanted to be chased.
Yeah.
And it's a bizarre set of circumstances where I think people can like almost let their opinion of someone's services be shaped on what their expectations were, versus that the person, like in your case, you're actually trying to get the person to have, here's the intervention, let's see if this works, and if this works, great. You don't have to spend any more money. You don't have to communicate with me anymore if you don't want to. And this is the best outcome. But for the people, like, because I've heard it before, and I'm sure you've probably heard this yourself, I used to be told, oh, if you're any kind of an athlete, you need to see your physio like once a month or blah, blah, blah. You need to always have a physio there. Who's your physio? Because you need to go for like a tune-up or a checkup or whatever bullshit.
An NCT.
Yeah, an NCT. Yeah.
And like I say, I get people coming to me that might come to me once a month and 5 weeks for their sports massage or whatever. But again, it's because they feel good. Like, they don't have a problem. They just like the way it feels.
Yeah.
If you're going to someone to be checked over every month, are you being given something to do every time? Or are you just going in and they're going, oh yeah, everything's fine, see you later? Because if that's the case, firstly, look, I mean, if you want to, that's fine. But I mean, you could save your money and rather invest it in something else. Wait till there is a problem. And if you're a person that likes massage, keep going, like, do you know? But again, think logically, like you don't go to a GP every month
for the crack,
just to take your blood pressure and check your ear, nose, and throat. Like, do you know what I mean? So what's the difference between that and going to a therapist or a physio for a potential issue? Like, they can't predict the problem. So
some sell that they can, though. Like, I've told you, I've had a physio say to one of my athletes that his rotator cuff is about to tear. Now, I didn't tell him which part of the rotator cuff. Or anything like that, but he said, that's about to go there. So he told me I had to stop pressing overhead completely for like 6 weeks.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, that's a group of muscles that is blamed for so much, and yet is very seldom actually a problem. Do you know, if you train your shoulders all over, or in every direction, every way, you don't need to worry about your rotator cuff.
Do you know, that actually ties in nicely. You have been working in like online consultation, online, like working with people in like Zoom calls and things like that. So this has obviously broadened out your availability to communicate with a much, you mentioned you're working with people across in the UK and Europe and things like that. So this is how this works. And I know I listened recently to a Barbell Medicine podcast and they were talking about telehealth, you know, like, and I think it was for a while, there was this perception, it was like this was only a COVID thing, you know, that you had like online consultations. But I actually think it has greatly, based on what they were talking about in this podcast anyway, Austin Barocchi and Jordan Feigenbaum, they were talking about the massive patient approval or satisfaction improvement because they're able to get appointments when they want. They don't have to go anywhere. They're not waiting to see a doctor. They don't feel like they're ushered in and out. It's obviously much handier for the practitioner as well because because most things can probably be resolved in their particular field, like general medicine. Most things could be resolved without the doctor ever having to physically touch the patient.
Correct.
And is that reflective of your experience as well?
It is. Like, I fell into it because of COVID,
right?
Just by accident. I'd never, if you'd asked me during COVID if you could do what I do online, I would have said, no, the fucking hope. But then it turned out it's actually, you can, and very easily and very well, provided you don't have reliance on manual therapy, because obviously that's a problem. So it's a case of just, again, listening to what they have to say. And then I will get them to send me videos of certain movements so I can see how they move. Their training logs, things like that. Some people send me like 30 videos and I have to go through them just to see certain things based on load or variation of a lift, that kind of stuff. Or if it's just a potential accessory exercise. Not all my clients are powerlifters, obviously a big majority. I work with like a lot of online female coaches in Australia, and like some of them might have an issue with a particular accessory or exercise. I'll just get them to show me how they do it. And so I can just see. Now, 95% of the time, I won't tell anyone to change your technique.
Yeah.
But I need to understand how they load that joint because we all do it slightly differently. And based on that is how they can then come up with a strategy for them. So you have to, I think to some degree, you need to know what you're looking for. You need to understand how people move and what is okay. And this is where it comes into, if you're looking for perfect movement, you're either going to cause an issue or you're going to be not very successful because you're going to never get that client moving the way you want them to if they physically can't, because that's where they're built. So it's, and again, a lot of like, what I say to people is I mightn't be able to help everyone, but I will impart some education on everyone. Because so many people, like that when I do my workshops, I can show people, if you want to get deeper into hip flexion, do these two simple things, do 10 reps of each, and let's reassess it in front of everyone. Watch it increase. I'll tell you, I know it'll increase. So there's certain things will always have a certain outcome. And then there's something where a person's actual structure is limited. You need to think outside the box, but you can see that from them moving. You can tell them, right, I want you to record your partner, friend, husband, client moving a certain way for me. I just want to see one thing. I won't tell them what I'm looking for, because if I do, you will subconsciously change the way you move. Yeah. That's why I say to people, I'm not trying to change the way you move, so don't try correct anything. Do it the way you do it all the time, because there's a massive probability I won't tell you change anything. So don't, because people will then try and straighten their back, fucking change their knees, all this kind of thing. And then it gives me a complete false idea of what's actually happening. So it does come down to just being able to assess how someone moves, but importantly, understand their life, listen to their problems and such, listen to the symptoms, listen to their history, and then figure out other things like hydration, all that kind of stuff, and the foundation of health and the things we do know that are uncontrollable from an outside of gym aspect.
Yeah, it goes to really show the importance of how having a good communication and breaking these things down for somebody, like that open channel is probably in many cases more important than physically lying somebody down at a table and poking them in various places.
Yeah. So I don't really do Zoom. It was just funny. I do a phone call first. Yeah. Because for a lot of people, it takes anxiety away straight away.
Because don't look at you.
Exactly. And they don't look my resting bitch face. Yeah. They can just go, hello, how are you getting on? Blah, blah, blah. And we talk that way first. Yeah. And then I will say, right, after this call, I'm going to send you a list of what I want you to record and send on to me.
Great.
That way, again, they're not looking at me. They're not nervous. They just record themselves in their own in a safe environment, and they send on to me, and I send back if I require anything more or any more details. And I say, right, okay, after I have everything I need, you will have a program. Normally, I say within 48 hours. At the moment, I'm blessed that I'm quite busy online, so I'm saying it's taken up to 4 or 5 days to get around to getting your program out to you. But your block doesn't start to get your program anyway, so you're not losing time.
Yeah, I think a phone call is a good way to do it as well, because it's a little more informal. You can have a bit more of a chat. You're not focused on the physical. It probably takes them out of their body for a few minutes as well.
That's the thing. It's not like when you go into a doctor and you're like nearly sucking sweating, just standing there going, "What's he going to do? What's he going to pull out next? Is it going to be a syringe or
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
that kind of thing.
So two things I think are important in what you've said. So most practitioners probably did have to change the way they approach clients over the course of the time we were in lockdown. And I wonder if that's going to be a massive benefit to healthcare over the next 10, 15, 20 years, because it has forced so many practitioners to roll with the times. Like you've seen yourself, it's opened up a world of possibility for you now. And then the other piece is, you mentioned if you're a practitioner over relied on, massage therapy, let's say, that you were probably a bit fucked during that period of time.
Yeah.
So
to some degree, yeah.
Would you say there is probably a massive number of practitioners that are in the sphere that literally what they do is I'm called a physiotherapist, but I'm basically just massaging people?
Yeah, there is, but I don't know that's necessarily. I think a lot of it is potentially laziness in one degree, putting in the effort to come up with programs and stuff like that. The other side is lack of confidence.
Right.
They might have a qualification, but they might feel comfortable giving people exercise. Or just a different, maybe they don't understand the same way others do. You can only do what you're comfortable doing to some degree, and only do what you think is right.
Do you think most other therapists actually train?
In general,
like any form of resistance,
insufficient amounts.
Right. So
I think I'm not a big believer in that. You need a 6-pack to be a good coach, right? But I do believe that anyone that's prescribing exercise or dealing with someone in pain during movement should even just train, whether it be leisurely in some sort of exercise or a sport.
Yeah.
And that's a personal opinion. I know it's not necessarily agreed with, but someone that doesn't know how to deadlift a squat, and your issue is only when you deadlift and squat, is that person the right fit or the efficient avenue to follow to solve that problem?
Well, I would look at it like, right, so we have minimum activity guidelines, right? So it's like 2,
which are even still too low, but never achieved.
They're quite low. It's like like 300 aerobic minutes, something like that, and then 2 resistance training sessions a week. Yeah. So it's quite low. Aerobic work is you go for a long walk, you're getting aerobic work done.
Yeah.
So I would, in the same way, I'm probably not going to go to someone for a mortgage that lives in their parents' house.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to go to a car salesman that
rides bicycle.
Rides bicycle, you know what I mean? Whatever it might be.
Without a driver's license, yeah.
Yeah. So I don't think it's outside the realm of understanding to assume the physical therapist, the physiotherapist, whatever, if there's somebody that can prescribe exercise, same with a PT, a fitness instructor. Again, it's not necessarily the aesthetic of how they look, but their ability their empathy for understanding what they're about to prescribe. So they can tell you exactly what's about to happen because they've to some degree done it themselves. Does that mean they need to be a competitive powerlifter? Not necessarily. No. But I mean, in your scenario, that certainly seems to help, given that you're a pretty good powerlifter and you work with powerlifters.
Yeah. Look, I call myself just about average or so.
Fuck off. Fuck off. No, that's an insult to average powerlifters. Because you're much better than average.
It obviously helps because I do the movements. I compete. So people see me doing it. People see me training. I put up bits of my training here and there. So I think people trust that I understand what it's like or what it might be like not to be able to do that thing that they need to be doing to be competitive at it versus someone that's never lifted the barbell and is going to tell them it's because their core is weak or because their glutes turned off or they fucking, rotator cuff's about to tear, this kind of bullshit. So I think that is why I'm developing a bit of momentum and a bit of rapport in the industry for it.
Well, I mean, it's great to have someone that understands what it's like, for lack of a better word, to be in the trenches. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like when I put up this question box for you coming on, oh geez, I didn't get any questions about therapy. I can
tell you. I can tell you exactly what you got.
What did I get?
Is it going to be 3-0 in November?
Yeah, I did. Yeah,
because he sent me a message with it written in. He said, I want to do this. I said, go ahead. And he said, no. He said, I don't want to take the piss out of a serious podcast. I'm like, would you fuck? I said,
no.
I said, Ian will laugh about it. Like, no, it's not.
It was Kevin McDermott and Mark Hayes throwing shade at you.
Mark Hayes, was it?
Dirty
bastard. Not him. Kevin beat me at abs 11. What was the last abs in April? I can't remember. 12 by 0.3 dots. So it's 2-0 at the moment. And then in November it'll be 2-1. And I don't know if he does April, it'll be 2-2. So
right.
And then I'll just start pulling away.
What's your dot score at the moment?
Finish on 422.
And you're saying you're fucking average. That's really, really good. Like, you know what? I think it's sometimes when we're in the scope, the sphere, the circle of powerlifting, it's like this vacuum, and you're looking at fuckers benching 200 kilos. You're like, God damn, I suck. You know what I mean? It's like, so many people are like waiting for the day they get their first sloppy single at 100 kilos, and you're benching like what, 140 something?
Yeah, I did 152 in training before comp, I did 147 a day, but yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Well, it doesn't matter if it's not.
I'm in general in most things I do, I will be my worst critic, which a lot of us are. And I will question myself a lot about certain things, like whether I'm good enough to do X, Y, and Z, like myself. It's just the type of person I am.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll never really see me praise myself significantly, whether it be at home, in private, or in public.
That's a shame, because you're good at what you do. I think having a realistic outlook on what it is that you provide is fine. You know, like we've mentioned, like you've probably, like, in the time your sphere of influence has grown and people come to know you more, you've probably, like we've mentioned, you've gotten some criticisms or people making anonymous posts because they're unwilling to have the debate in person. Like, as this podcast grows, I get another white boy with a podcast. You know what I mean? But that would never stop me from making it, because frankly, man, the people that like do right, for example, I don't think anyone that's a really, really good powerlifter, unless it's like Jesse Moore or Jake, right? If it's like somebody who's like a top class powerlifter, is not going to talk shit on newer powerlifters or people that are not lifting as heavy as them, because they remember what it was like the first time they loaded 140 kilo bench, a 220 kilo squat, or a 250 kilo deadlift. So,
and that's actually something that I had to overcome at the start of doing this, is that saying, is people coming to me that are a fuckload stronger than me, because I wasn't strong, so I don't understand what it's like. But now I'm dealing with abs pro level athletes, because they trust what I'm doing, and they are and like that, I'm getting business from them because they're happy with the way it's working. They're referring other very well known, especially in the UK, very low strongmen and powerlifters coming to me now, and it's because they now trust based on reputation and referral. Yeah. Because if someone just looked to me and I weigh 80 kg and they go, fuck, I weigh 125, I bench half your total. You know, that attitude slowly dying down. Yeah. And people are putting more trust into me.
Well, it's like, who's your better option here? The physio that puts up 150 kilo bench, or all right, not physio, sorry.
Yeah.
Therapist.
The guy.
That guy, Tristan, Pain to Performance Tristan, that puts up about 150 kilo bench, or, you know, the therapist that's like, we're just going to have you not squat and deadlift for 6 weeks. You know, who are you going to call?
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly, yeah.
But I think that's like a massive element of it, and I think that's a good point for you, is that you have been in that position. Even understanding what a warm-up room is like, I think, is a huge plus. Yeah. And whether that's in a specifically because you're working with other powerlifters, but even in strongman, understanding what they're about to do. Like, obviously, it's a very specific type of loading pattern they're about to do, and depending on the events they're in and things like that. So I can absolutely see that being a massive plus. But I would also say I would recommend, even just while we're here, don't lose your sense of progression, because like comparatively we all suck next to the top guys.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
But like, you know, you're doing pretty damn good. Like, you know, and I think that's a good, and it's that the person that's like, the point I was going to make is that for me with the podcast, the person that's made 300 episodes of a podcast won't ridicule me for my first 15 episodes. I go, you know, 100%. Good for you. You made 15 episodes.
It's the one that's never done it.
Yeah, it's always the little fuckers that aren't doing anything, that are fucking sitting at home, leaving nasty comments on whatever it's YouTube,
Yeah.
Instagram,
Yeah.
Facebook, Twitter, what I can't remember.
Yeah.
Don't read the comments is kind of the big thing.
Yes.
I generally don't, but
Yeah.
just that, like, I know that those things exist.
Yes.
And I think it depends on the type of person you are, I guess, how it affects you. I'd imagine you seem like a fairly, like, you know, logical person. I doubt these things are massive, like, impediments to your ability to help people. You're just like, whatever.
No.
Kind of laugh at them, you know?
Yeah. 100%, yeah.
And I know there's other, like, so as a therapist, I'd imagine there are somebody that helps people not feel pain. Who are the people then that you kind of like look to? So I have people in like powerlifting or even podcasts and sphere that I'm like, damn, they're in a really good position. I really like what they do. That's quite aspirational to be like. Do you have like a couple of accounts you follow or people you've worked with that you would say like have added to you as somebody in the sphere you're in?
Yeah, I would.
Shout them out.
For different for different reasons, I suppose. So in Ireland, I suppose the person that would have helped me get into clinical practice would have been Ronnie Ward. So he has what's called optimumbody.ie. Ronnie practices quite differently to me. He's same qualifications as me, but Ronnie went to the States and did a whole lot of other qualification stuff. So we practice very differently, but I still will sometimes refer people to him. I don't treat my own family. So like I brought my daughter to him instead of me treating her, even though it was just very, very, very gentle manual therapy and stuff that helped her. But I won't do that because they don't appreciate or trust. It's just a quick fix. Whereas if they go and listen to him, it gives them a better understanding and respecting it more, so they'll do it. In terms of, there's a load, like there's, you know, unfortunately, the problem is some of them do a lot of memes, which is okay, but they do actually have a lot of knowledge behind that if they just broaden a bit more. But, you know, you have Adam Meekins, which I know a lot of people will be anti to some degree because of his calling out bullshit. But his posts on the correct information is what I think you should really look into. You have Strength Physio, a woman, I can't remember her first name, but Physio Formula is what her account is. Very good posts and stuff. You'll see those same people follow each other as well. Anyone that is giving you either both sides of a story, what you might be led to believe, but what we actually know, is always a good thing to follow. But what I'll do is I'll tag a couple accounts with this podcast to people that you can follow as well. You might see a lot of it kind of mirrored in what I do because I'm on the same realm as I want to promote the right stuff and the most helpful information to some degree. Yeah, there's a few, but a lot of them I can't remember how they handles. I just see their stuff and I just like, oh yeah, it's interesting and stuff like that. Yeah.
You've got them. They're out there.
I've got them. Yeah.
I think it's that. I think now with just the age of social media, you could be like being positively influenced by the people you see in your timeline, but because it's, as you said, it's all the same sort of group of people that kind of interfollow each other. Yeah, it might not be like distinguishable from who is posting exactly what. You just know you got valuable information from a given post, and it whether that's a new idea, contrarian to a current idea you have, or reinforcing idea you have, it has its own value. Yeah. But the last real big topic I wanted to touch on is that, so like, don't get me wrong, by no means you're not an old dude, but you came to like powerlifting a little later than what most, like nowadays we've the TikTok generation, we've got 15, 16, 17-year-olds getting into powerlifting. Yeah. You obviously came to it a little later, already having a family, running a business now, and now going fully self-employed into this business. But you've still managed to make really, really excellent gains. And I think that really stands as a testament to this idea that people have about becoming an athlete or a sports person later in life. Is like, later in life, I'm trying making people think you're like fucking 50 here, 60, 70, you know? But you're
there.
not quite at all. But that's what I'm saying. You've still managed to make some excellent gains. And I know we've talked a little bit about you went through a series of events that led you to go to the doctor for TRT. Fucking completely losing the fucking name of TRT now in my head. Testosterone replacement therapy, Jesus Christ. So what can you, again, this is not prescriptive, it's not descriptive, it's just giving a little bit of an explanation of what led you down that pathway and how that changed your life.
So I suppose if we go back 13 years ago, I would have been going through a bit of a patch where I just fucking hated shit, couldn't get out of bed, struggling. I knew I wasn't depressed. I'm a very anxious person in general. But anyway, at that time I went to the doctor and like that I got handed antidepressants, went on them, and I felt happier, but I felt fake.
Right.
And I was like, I don't really like this. So I started, at that point, I do my own research and stuff. And I was like, right, you can't just stop taking the shit because it can make you like put you into severe depression. So you have to wean yourself off. So I wouldn't advise anyone to do this, but I then started halving my dose for a few weeks, halving it again for a few weeks until eventually I stopped. And I started taking up exercise, just my own thing, just to get exercising. I was eating okay, started just eating a little bit less, say, takeaways and stuff like that. And eventually got myself, I was fine. I had 1 or 2 laps of the years where I felt really shit, but shit was happening in my life at the time. So I just kind of waded through the water and eventually it was fine. So we're now 23. So towards the end of 2021, I started going through a patch where I noticed I was sort of becoming quite indecisive. I was becoming procrastinating. I can be a moody person in general, but I was like extra moody, very short-tempered with my kids, very, very quick to snap. And it was causing a problem at home where we were having arguments because of my not my temper, but like my mood and my sort of moping around, will we say. And again, I knew I wasn't depressed. So I knew I didn't need an antidepressant. So it just happened that it was around, I think it was around, actually my appointment was October of 2021. So it was just before that I was heading up to Belfast to do a workshop. And I was listening to a podcast for men over 40s and how to like help your natural testosterone levels. Just came on by mistake actually. And I was listening to it and they were giving through like symptoms. And I was like, oh fuck, this sounds very fucking familiar to me. Like, so I've been chatting to people like Ben Crowell and stuff, because I have a very good relationship with Ben. He'd send me his client stuff and just chatting to him about that. And he had said to me, just go and get your bloods on and see what happens. And I was like, fine. Because at this point, I was training powerlifting 4 days a week. I was eating relatively healthy. I'm by no means overweight. I was getting pretty decent sleep. Like all the things that you should look at first were pretty much bang on. And any small adjustments were not going to be enough to significantly make me all of a sudden feel amazing. So anyway, turns out got the appointment, had my bloods done, went back a few weeks later for the consultation, and turns out I had like pretty much no testosterone as such, right? He was amazed that he said to me, his word to me was, you must be extremely stubborn in the fact that you're still pushing through your training and stuff, because like you don't really have a whole lot to help you recover from. And I was like, well, this might explain why I dropped to like 3 days a week, because I was feeling like shit, and my wife has her own business going on, so we were trying to juggle things. And he like say estrogen, for example, was like they could get like almost no reading on it. My cortisol, he said, was the highest he's seen in a long time, yet I didn't feel stressed. Again, it was all hormones. So going through assessment, he found that there is a cyst on one of my testes. About 20 years ago, I had a jet skiing accident back home where I landed on my pelvis, basically seated on a fiberglass handle in the water. And so he reckons that happened back then. He said it feels like old, whatever it means. My testes themselves are half the size they should be for my age. And I have a hernia actually right next to my dick. So there's actually a hole, almost like a hole in my pelvis. If you put your finger and cough, my bowel touches it. He reckons that's been there for the whole time. And basically, based on my bloods, everything is functioning from a brain point of view, but it's like everything goes down to the balls and everything stops from there. So we elicited that it was the physical trauma from back then that really advanced the process. So the range of for testosterone for my age is, I think it's 14 to 29. I was at 8. Okay, right. So I was way below. So anyway, his suggestion was the what they call TOT, so optimization therapy, to bring me back to normal. So that started in February of last year. Been going back every 6 months for bloods to check, because I have to figure out it takes a while for everything to readjust to the addition of testosterone, make sure everything we want to keep me at sort of normal levels. We don't want to obviously keep them too low. We don't want to go super physiological. So the first bloods came back very high, and that's just because of the body was like, what the fuck? And it does its own thing. So we kept going at that, and then it came back down. So the last bloods, which was January of this year, was 29.4. 29 is the maximum, so slightly over. But the important thing was the health markers like cholesterol, cortisol, all that stuff was coming down, which is what we're looking at, because there's a lot of cancer in my family. So based on the bloods initially, he said to me, his words were, your cardiovascular disease waiting to happen, but we can address that. So that put the fear of God into me with my kids and stuff like that. What people don't realize, they think testosterone is like, oh my God, it's a steroid that, let's build muscles. And it's like, when you have very low testosterone and everything in your life is sorted from a natural testosterone level help in terms of your sleep, your stress, your food, all that kind of stuff, the mental changes that you get when your testosterone is normal compared to when it's low is unbelievable. I'll give you an example. One symptom of low testosterone is no morning wood. Right. His question, because I've never had erectile dysfunction at all, any issue with that at all. So I was like, nah, I couldn't have low testosterone. And he was like, do you know what? That's actually not that common a symptom. He said, so I said to him, when I left his clinic, his suggestion is injecting into the subcutaneous fat of the stomach. So he does it with you in the first appointment. And I said to him, how long will I know till I know if something's working? He's like, the first morning you wake up with the morning wood. Because he asked me a time, when did you last get one? So I couldn't tell you. So he was like, right. So anyway, 8 weeks to the day, bing, wake up in the morning. Fuck, this shit's working. But it wasn't until about 12 to 16 weeks later where I really noticed the psychological difference. I was happy waking up in the morning, getting out of bed. I had drive, less procrastination. My mood and my temper really reduced. My patience increased, which was all fucking amazing. The problem with me then was I started feeling guilty because now I was like, how long have I been like this with my kids and my family? If I create this environment where they almost resent me a little bit because I've been a dick. Now, I'm a good father, I know that, but did I create an environment where they were afraid to do something wrong in case I shouted? So that was the hardest part for me after that, is dealing with that shit. And then moving on from that.
Well, I mean, I think it's a very bold decision to do that because I think there is a lot of stigma around like men seeking help for anything. So the fact that like in one way it must have been a little bit of a relief to find that there was an answer. And then as you mentioned, as the weeks rolled on and symptoms improved, like you're as you mentioned, your Mickey was working nice.
Let's just it worked fine, just not first thing in the morning.
Yeah, no, his dick wasn't working at all. That's what I'm taking away from this. That's what I'm going to tell everybody. And then, you know, as you said, your mental clarity, you basically were experiencing a much more positive mental state,
100%,
particularly to be around other people.
And this isn't please don't get me wrong, this wasn't I was looking at my mental health. This was just like, I know something wasn't right within me. I tried other things and it wasn't helping. And I just thought maybe when I spoke to other people, I was like, this could be hormonal. I don't know.
You went through the
but
checklist,
I'm near 40. This could be quite. So it just happened but due more because of trauma we think from many years ago, more than anything else. But the thing is, so I had a decision to make at that point. I could either do it or not, basically. Quality of life, it was a no-brainer. The issue then is coming to powerlifting. So you can, in very, very acute situations, you can still compete, okay? But there's different levels of hypogonadism, which is what I was supposed diagnosed with, because for anyone listening, my testosterone comes from a pharmacy under prescription. So the thing is that it's a very strict guide. And the problem with hormones is they can fluctuate.
Yeah.
Okay. If when you get your bloods done for your TUE, that has fluctuated in the wrong direction by the slightest amount, firstly, it's going to show up in WADA and you're going to be called out as a cheat. Even though you have your TUE, something could go wrong. And for whether it's just the Irish IPF or WADA, I'm not sure where the fee comes from. But if you're not an international athlete, the TUE costs us €385. Plus my ticket. Why would I want to spend €500 to do an IPF comp when it's not my number one priority in life. I'm not looking to become a world champion. To me, the cost didn't weigh in my favor at all. So I can do ab series.
Yeah.
So that was the other aspect, because I knew I could take some master's records in my weight class. But now that I've experienced this, what I have from the treatment, I couldn't give a fuck about them. Because when you understand the difference it made in my life, you would understand that records mean absolutely nothing.
Yeah, I would completely agree. And I think that's, firstly, I think it's a very small percentage of people that could ever do powerlifting as anything more than a nice hobby sport.
Yeah.
Because there's no money in it.
Oh,
Unless you're like the top 1% athlete who just gets a shitload of sponsors.
It's just a cost of money.
Exactly.
It's an expense.
It's a fun outlet for your it's a good it can make your training much more process orientated because you do have this outcome goal at the end, but beyond that, just enjoy it. And I do think there is a bit of particularly in Ireland, I think there's this idea that competing in the IPF is the only meaningful way to do powerlifting, whereas as somebody who has done both, that ain't it. You know what I mean? From speaking from personal experience.
And again, and to me, now obviously I'm coached by abs, I work with the abs lifters. It doesn't you can call it favorable level, but I think an ab series competition, especially if you don't compete or take part in powerlifting, is a much more enjoyable
100%
than going to any other federation meet, because it's very clinical in those meets where music is generally quite sterile. Soft. It is, and it's like it's just too professional for me. Given I'm not professional at it as such. So to me, in abs, if you want to enjoy a powerlifting competition, but don't take part, ab series is obviously going to be a much better environment to be in. And as a competitor, it just seems like a lot more support to me. I don't know. I haven't competed in IPF, so I can't compare them, but I've been in the back room because I have a lot of athletes that compete in IPF. So I've been in the back room. It's still very, there's a lot more support in the abs because no one's there really as like everyone's there just to fucking do what they can, and it just seems to be a different environment. I'm not mocking the IPF. I'm just saying, in my opinion, the ab series is a much I suppose also probably a less stressful environment for especially newbies. I think going into Division 2 competition the first time as a powerlifter, I think is much, because there's no weight class. You're not competing. It's just go in, do what you can, and fucking enjoy it. Yeah.
Well, I'll put it to you this way: as somebody who's done both, right? I would look at it as that ab series it's Jay Farrant's vision for what powerlifting can be. And don't get me wrong, there's other people that have their piece of it. Like I get to do master of ceremonies, I get to commentate the main events.
Yeah.
But it's Jay Farrant's vision.
Yeah.
Whereas now I'm gonna exclude the International Powerlifting Federation for a minute here.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna talk just about the Irish PF. All right. So the Irish PF is more like a collective of ideas. Now they have their the committee, they have their elected council, but it's definitely a much more collective effort. And like that, don't get me wrong, there's things that can go a bit more chaotic because there's so many moving parts. But I'm really happy that both things exist.
Yes.
Because I think if you want to have that much more, I suppose, for lack of a better word, clean, almost presented like an Olympic sport, you've got the Irish PF. And I think what they do extremely well.
Yeah.
But I would agree that if you're getting into powerlifting to be an international athlete, you want to be super competitive in a particular weight class, and you're looking to, go like the guys are going to Malta, that we want to go abroad, go international, that's probably a good way to do it. If you're very, very good.
Yeah.
Or just to have more options for local meets, I'm really glad that it exists.
Yes.
On the other hand, ab series, I think, is that if you're kind of, I think it's like more like the rogue element of powerlifting. It's the much more rock and roll version.
Yeah.
Like, this is fucking Slipknot and that's Katy Perry.
Yeah. It's like the underground almost to some degree.
Yeah.
But legitimate.
Yes. I would say this is kind of the issue for the Irish PF, because again, I nearly said I lifted. Oh, I did lift it. I'm fucking powerlifting. I nearly said I wrestled at nationals for a second there. Fucking hell, my past come back to haunt me. So when I was lifting at nationals, that was a really good competition.
Yes,
but again, it's reliant on so many people bringing so many bits and pieces to make it work.
Yeah,
that it could always have gone better, but it still was excellent. I think everyone did their job really, really well, and I think it was probably like I've only done 2 Irish PF meets. I did Last Chance in December, and I did.
Nationals.
Fucking nationals.
Yeah.
I've been to a shit ton though. I volunteered almost every one of them.
Yeah.
And that was an extremely enjoyable experience. Because it was in a hotel, we were all there. It was really, really nice. But the thing is, I feel like that's like, it's a, for lack of a better word, it's going to sound very opposite. It's like a series of events that lead to this. Whereas the ab series is like a spectacle.
Yes.
Like
it's a show.
You can't miss it.
Yeah.
Like Clash of Titans that we had recently was fucking excellent.
Yeah.
The first competition there in Glasgow, excellent. And now we've got the pro coming up in August.
Yeah.
And it's getting more and more and more unmissable. But I think there is always going to be that element of people that want to have what they consider to be drug-free sport, whereas we all know drug tested does not necessarily mean drug-free.
Yes.
And as long as they are governed by the International Powerlifting Federation, there's always going to be these limiting,
of course, factors
barriers in it, whereas Jay can do whatever fuck he wants.
Yeah, and you see the thing is, what suits me at the series is it's always April, August, November.
Yeah.
I can plan. I know at the moment my way of working again because of not necessarily because of my age, but because of everything involved. I'm probably looking at doing every second one at the moment, or November to April is generally long enough, but August, November is just not long enough for me to do another peak. So April, August, or April, November, and repeat. So I can plan. I know every year when it's going to be on. I can plan everything around it. Whereas IPF, you have to wait till the calendar comes out, and the calendar comes out, and next month there's a comp in like 8 weeks time. You're like, that's
a bit quick
shit,
turnaround, yeah.
Do you know?
Well, the other piece though I will say is just because you mentioned your TUE, so for those listening, that's therapeutic use exemption for. There's certain therapeutic use medications.
Yeah, so they class it as life altering, I think, or something that improves the quality of your life, which I found quite
bizarre.
Yeah, considering I was like, well, if only you could have been in my head a year ago, in my head now, you would probably maybe change the fact that you don't believe what I went through was life altering.
Well, I could maybe understand some of the exemption or some of the drugs on the list.
Yes.
Because some of them maybe have genuine performance enhancing properties. But some of them are for treating things like ADHD, asthma, heart medications.
Yeah.
That
Clenbuterol is asthma like.
Yeah. So that now says to me that it's less about the performance enhancing side, a little part of what it does is about making money.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm not really on board for that. But I think as well, the one thing so I'm going to have Raquel on a podcast now shortly, and that was another thing we're going to talk about is the TU. So abs not being tested was always seen as this thing. Oh, it's a platform for the geared lifters, you know, but it's also for people who need TUEs for medication they need to be on to be a functional member of society.
And don't want that stupid fucking expensive.
Don't want to have to pay another couple of £100 just to be able to, you know, do 9 lifts on a platform, which is a stupid bargain.
And then in defense, it drops from 385 to 100 once you've represented internationally. Which I think is a bit fucking, I don't know. I think it's a bit unfair. I think it should be a uniform price and much more affordable. Because if you want to do 2 comps a year and as a non-athlete, that's only €800.
Yeah. But it's because they can make more money because the majority of lifters will only ever lift at an open. Yeah. That's just the way powerlifting works. Yeah. But I suppose the big massive upside for you is that you recognized you had these symptoms by this happenstance of this podcast and you went and got treated. And just incidentally, do you want to reveal where you were treated or do you want to keep that to yourself?
Well, I went to Neurocell in Malahide. Just ironically, I didn't realize the doctor is actually South African as well. So it was quite funny to walk in. But any GP in the country can prescribe testosterone. They just don't for their own reasons. I think a lot of it's fear or misunderstanding or whatever. But I'm not telling anyone that you need to go and get it done. What I would say is when you start getting to the age of 40, there's other things to be looking out for as well. So I would always encourage people to get bloods done anyway. There's things like PSA levels, let's say your prostate levels, that kind of stuff. There's things to just keep markers on. General, like if you get a full panel, you get all your vitamins and minerals as well. So you might see, look, hey, fuck, I'm lacking a bit of that. That might make a bit of sense as to something else I've noticed. You know, it's not about going to an excuse looking to get on gear, like, because it's not really.
Yeah, it's not the same thing.
No, it's
not even
really,
remotely.
no.
Like even if you look at the low dose of testosterone some of the lads take, it's still like 4 times the amount as TRT.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like they will prescribe you the dose first, and you work on that, and then over a period of time, you'll know if that's enough that you're going to stay on forever, or because I am on it forever now. It's whether that's going to be enough for you. It's too high or too low, and it takes a year pretty much for your body to fully adjust to everything and see what a true reflection of that dose does to you.
Yeah, let me ask you just one last question on the whole TRT thing, just out of curiosity, because again, the majority of people listening to this probably aren't at that stage in their life just yet, but they'll be getting there probably in the next 8 to 10 years, let's just say. So have you had any negative side effects of it, or has it all just been positive so far?
No negatives. The only negative having to fucking inject yourself.
Right.
Do you know? And like that doesn't even hurt. But a few months back, I just developed mental block. I can't do it anymore. My hand just literally stops, and I can't move anything closer. Now, a lot of people are going, "Oh, just man up and fucking do it." And I wish that was as simple as that. I physically can't. Like my arm, it's like someone's holding it back.
Wow. Yeah.
So I'm actually looking down the route of hypnotherapy to try and get over that.
Oh, really cool.
Because it's not. I did a very bad experience with injections as a kid, and reading up that could be something that just all of a sudden manifests itself. But like the injections don't hurt. So the very frustrating thing for me is why can't I do it? It doesn't hurt me. I almost feel absolutely nothing.
Do you have to do it very regularly?
Twice a week.
Right.
Yeah, twice a week. Now my doctor would have always said every second day, but I'm like, nah, fuck, no. The esters I take are long enough that it makes as little as no difference.
Okay.
So it's really just Monday, Thursday, job done. It takes 2 seconds, and like that, I'm using fucking a very tiny amount, like minuscule amounts compared to. A lot of people.
Some of the other people.
And again, some people
chair.
in my situation are probably taking a lot more.
Yeah.
Because of they need it.
Because it's individual.
Your body's going to respond differently. And sometimes it's done to sort of a small amounts frequently, they believe, sort of tries to help see if your body will kickstart its own production again, which we've seen mine hasn't. So I will have to stay on it. Some people, it's enough to get them going, and then they might be able to come off of it. But the vast majority of the time, you will stay on it forever.
Cool. And I think, like, honestly, like, thanks for talking about this, because I think it's one of those. It's one of those things that I think, like, men generally have a bit of a harder time talking about like health, but these are things that could potentially. It could be one person and 500 listeners that decides to go and get this checked, that it ends up being a life-changing experience. Or it could be the reassurance somebody goes and gets it checked and they're told they're fine and they just need to get their fucking act together with exercise,
100%.
their diet, their sleep.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
So you've got a couple of clinics coming up by now. So the clinics, I imagine, are going to be a bigger thing in the next
I only have one so far planned because I spent a lot of last year for doing a fuckload of traveling for them. And I've decided I'm not going to do this year. Because I'm fortunate, a lot of people coming to me from around the country to see me and online. So the 14th of July, 15th of July, Saturday 15th of July in Revolution Fitness.
Oh, James Hanley's crew,
Saturday that day. There's a link in my bio if you'd like to buy a ticket. I think there's 4 tickets left.
Sound.
So basically it's just going through a lot of what we discussed here and showing people. I believe it's good for athletes and coaches because it's keeping you in your lane. Describing some exercises can help certain positions and things, but not teaching you how to treat pain, but how to work around it and deal with it, and when you should see someone and what you can do yourself to try avoid having to see someone X, Y, and Z.
Brilliant, yeah, and that's a big thing as well. I suppose we shouldn't leap over. If people do want to contact you, they don't have to wait for an in-person clinic.
Nope.
You can always have a phone.
And like I say, people, the phone call's free.
Yep.
But I'm not going to give you a free plan. Just understand that, because I get people ringing for the phone call, and then when we discussed how we move forward, it's like, they were hoping sort of that you can hear they were hoping I was going to give them a load of free advice. If you go on my Instagram, you can get as much advice off that as you want, but understand that this is also my business. So you don't go to the doctor for free medication,
And I think the thing for most people is, and that's the thing with the internet, it's like, all the information's out there. What you're really paying for is for the person to filter for you and make it specific to you.
And understand, like, if you work from online, I'll tell you, it's €90 for a month. And that's 4 check-ins. In some cases, if it comes to competition, we might check in more frequently. And if your situation is very bad, where you're struggling with day-to-day life, we might put more check in more frequently, but I don't change the price.
Yeah,
it's a situation. Like,
transparency is good.
But versus some people paying €70 for 45 minutes to go and see someone.
Yeah.
So if you want to weigh up cost.
The value's there. That's it. You buy cheap, buy twice. The value's there.
Yeah, 100%.
Tristan will give you a digger. He's helped me. You've helped a number of my athletes. And you've second visit on the podcast. Thank you very much for coming on.
I appreciate having me.
Thank you very much.
No bother.